Hey guys, so today we are going to answer the question. Basically, the question in question was, Frederick, are frameworks like React and Angular killing off frameworks such as Bootstrap? So let's get into it. Well, yes, more or less, it's looking that way. But I will raise my finger and I will also say that it doesn't actually have to be that way, but I'll give you a bit of a take on why this is happening. Now, the reason why I claim this is because Bootstrap is, as you probably know, a CSS framework, whereas React and Angular and Vue as well, and a few others as well, are SPA frameworks. So how can these two things be related? Because they have nothing inherently to do with each other. I mean, Bootstrap is just a way for you to style a page in a consistent manner, while React and Angular are ways for you to build a very specific type of application, an SPA, single page application. How can they in any way cause any issues for each other? Well, the simple answer is that it's about the ecosystem and the culture around the way we do work. That is probably the easiest way to think about it. And it's also the main reason why I argue that if you want to be a professional software developer, it's more important for you to pick a language that has the culture that reflects the way that you want to do work. If you are interested in doing freelance work, or if you're interested in doing agency work, consultancy, stuff of this nature with smaller clients, a fairly good bet for you is to work with, say, Ruby. If you were interested in doing enterprise level application development, you're interested in working at really big companies or pretty much anywhere, even in smaller consultancy firms that works towards the big companies, it's a much better bet for you to go into C# or Java, where the culture around that sort of development has already been fairly established. And the same thing goes for this case here, where nothing is stopping you from using, say, React and Bootstrap at the same time, but fewer and fewer people are doing so because there are other tools that are more closely associated with React. Now, I'm not saying that Bootstrap is going away anytime soon. We still have jQuery around, which is, React. I would even argue that the threat to, say, jQuery is a lot higher when it comes to React and Angular and so forth than it is to Bootstrap, but it's still being affected. Now, the reason why it's being affected is, in my opinion, it has to do with that Bootstrap is associated with a specific way of doing work, whereas today it's much more common that people go towards things such as inlining CSS or using something like post CSS and loaders and stuff of this nature in order to, in many cases, use it through their Webpack configurations. And pretty much although you can technically do this for Bootstrap, it has never been designed it wasn't really designed to do this. And then, of course, people are claiming that they are more and more performance aware these days. And that's why they don't opt in for Bootstrap, because Bootstrap is quite heavy. Well, depending on the parts that you include, but most people don't care enough to, which is kind of funny because it's very rare that I ever meet anybody who throws up the performance discussion and actually sticks by it. I've talked to many, I only think it's on the blogs on the internet I've ever seen anybody really prove, quote unquote, that they care about performance, because it's very rare that you find developers who are really, really focused on that part. They should absolutely be, but it's a bit of a hypocrisy, if you will, I will say. But anywho, I digress. So basically what I'm stating to you is that there's no real good reason as to why Bootstrap is falling out of popularity due to React and Angular, but there is a trend that goes towards that, because there are better tools that are more closely associated with, say, React than using Bootstrap. And frankly, I don't see that as being much of a problem, because every time I kind of hear this sort of question where somebody asks, is this killing off that? Now I understand why the question, well, I want to believe, I kind of think at least that I know what that question comes from. And that comes from either fear that, hey, you may know this thing over here and now it's going out of popularity, so shit, now you're going to be forced to learn something new. A scary, scary thought in IT, right? And the other part being the possibility of somebody wanting to start with something and they don't know if they're should pick the one or the other. And that's a more understandable situation. I would absolutely like to think that if I pick something that if I'm going to go into programming, I don't want to pick something that is completely irrelevant. But I think that for the other part of that, the people who are scared that their stuff that they are using is going to go out of fashion, I mean, guys, that's the job. It is the job. And this is why I make a distinction between professional programmers and people who are just doing some basic coding. I mean, a true professional has either already invested enough time into something that if it was the case that they can no longer find a job doing the thing they're doing right now, they're most likely going to find a job doing something else, because programming is very similar regardless of what platform you're using. And the people who are so focused on one single platform that they are actually they feel a bit threatened by changes in the ecosystem, I mean, honestly, then I wouldn't even, I might offend some people now, but honestly, then I don't think that you are what we call a professional. It's, if you are only capable of producing software, if you're using WordPress or say Bootstrap or something, if you cannot do it without these tools, then I will say that at best you're a freelancer or like an amateur programmer or something. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I always get this question quite often on the internet, but I never get it in the industry. Never get it from other developers professionals that I work with or people that I meet. And I mean, that can also come down to people being fairly junior. That's also a possibility. It's just that it's a question that usually comes out of fear when, instead of focusing, and this is what I argue, instead of focusing so much on, is this killing off that, you should ask the fundamental question, are you good enough to pick up something new? Because that is the job. That is literally the job. Programming is not about learning one tool and just sticking with that for life. Well, it shouldn't be about that, at least. Some people do, but it still comes down to inherently learning new things. It comes down to understanding complicated problems and using your mind, if you will, to solve new and more complicated problems. If it's not a new programming language you're learning new things about your business, or you're learning new things about the project that you are working on. So what I want you to take away from this is that, although yes, it is true that Bootstrap is getting less and less popular due to a new rise in SBA framework popularity and the tools that are more associated with them, it's something, it shouldn't dissuade you, if you will. There are use cases for Bootstrap. It's still around, if you will, although things are moving in another direction. But that is, and this is what I'm saying, guys, that is kind of the ecosystem. That is the nature of IT. There are always going to be new tools coming out. So you can either kick up a fuss about it and try to just stay on things that are going to stay relevant for a really long time, or you can adapt and learn new things. Have a great day.